Nelson George. I'm going to be moderating this Q&A, and I first want to bring up Mike Todd, who's the director-writer. And Mike, why don't you introduce the rest of your team?
Oh yeah, we'll introduce, first of all, Quenell Jones, who shot the film with me, put a lot of time in. We worked together 4 years to get on it. And then he's very kindly turned up tonight, even though it's very difficult for him, Les Wolffe, who's Joe Frazier's manager.
So I think the first thing we should do tonight is actually take a moment of silence for Joe Frazier. Thank you. There's a lot to say. I was quite moved by the film. The sense of place, that gym, it came to life. Also his connection to South Carolina, and just creating all that backstory that you don't usually get about athletes, where you just see them in one place, but to really see their connection to history. So I just want to start, I guess, Mike, with how you came to be involved with this project.
Well, yeah, it goes back a number of years. I think, even though it was slightly before my time, growing up as, a fan of boxing to some degree. I'm not saying I'm the biggest ever, but that era, I think, cast such a long shadow over, the sport, and it was such an interesting time, and the social issues connected with it. And, I think, like most people, it was the Muhammad Ali's legend, which was so fascinating to me. But I'd always been kind of enamored by Joe Frazier as a person, and, I think I just felt that his story, outside of that legend, outside of that rivalry, had never been told. And the gym, the story of his gym, and the work he did there, was part of his life for so long, for 40 years. Those fights with Ali are 3 nights in his life, and he's been running that gym in Philadelphia for 40 years, and, and everything where he came from and everything his life kind of means in a wider context beyond the sport. And you see the way people have reacted to his death today. It's as though the world has finally remembered, everything he meant, and how important a figure he was. And it was sad to see his situation in Philadelphia, the situation with the gym, and someone of that global, iconic status to be doing what he was doing and being where he was.
As Michael was saying, the key to Joe was so much more than the boxers, what you saw here. He was one of the most generous and gracious individuals I've seen. He just, one of my favorite stories is one night he said to me, Les, we got to do this thing I want to do tomorrow. I said, Joe, I can't do it. I got to get my car fixed. 8 o'clock in the morning, my doorbell rings. There he is with a toolkit. And my neighbor said, is that Joe Frazier under the hood of your car? I said, no, it's George Foreman. We would drive down a highway and you see a car broken down. We had to pull over and help the person.
You guys saw that as well?
Yeah, we were driving around in the old neighbourhood there by the pal gym. We picked up a guy. I'll not say he was quite homeless, but he was not in a good way. And Joe knew him from years ago. Probably not seen him for 20 or 30 years. We pulled over, we budged up, and gave him a lift to where he was going. That's the time.
He was incredibly generous man. And
in fact, when I first took him on as a client, I didn't know who his fans were. But he and I were going to a meeting here in New York. We're going to this building and we're late for a meeting. Some fans came up, Joe, I want an autograph. And I go, you have to be the bad cop, start the block. And he said, no, we'll be late for the meeting. I never insult a fan. And you see it in the depth of passion and respect that is being expressed around the world today, that people understood this man loved and respected his fans as much as they loved and respected him. He was describing the second fight. I said, how was it? He said, well, let's put it this way. He was hugging me so much I thought he was going to kiss me. And then the thrill of Manila. At the end of the 14th round, Ali had turned to Dundee and said, I'm done. The man is killing me. But most people are not aware Joe fought his whole professional boxing career blind in his left eye. And it was only when his right eye was closed that Eddie punched through the talon because he couldn't see. If he had actually stood up, he would have won the thrill in Manila. Because if you look at the films of the fight, Ali couldn't get off the stool. It was too weak. He collapsed.
I gotta say, one of the most impressive speakers in the film was Bernard Hopkins, with a lot of passion and heart. Talk about his relationship with Frazier, and so I just thought he was one of the most powerful forces, and actually knowing his journey as a fighter as well.
Yeah, well, he'd obviously gone there, as he said, in the film as a young boy. He'd been in the gym and he'd been boxing from a young age. He's kind of given it up and drifted off, and then ended up in prison, all the rest of it. And he was at Joe's gym again briefly after he come out of prison. His career really didn't start in Joe Frazier's gym. It was elsewhere, but still, I think as a Philadelphia fighter from North Philadelphia as well, he was aware of the legacy of Joe Frazier in that city and the importance of that gym as a safe haven, as he calls it, a place where people could go and they were free to be able to at least, dedicate themselves to something positive. I mean, there's times when we thought people are, like you see the reaction today and you just wondered if people remembered who he was. We thought, unbelievable, we have access to Joe Frazier, this access, someone of such an iconic status. We couldn't believe what we had and the footage we had and the style in which we filmed it. We didn't have much money, just all fairly intimate stuff, and people weren't reacting to it the same way we thought what we had. Do you know what I mean? But now you see what's happened, and hopefully this is something that tells part of his story, maybe fills in a few gaps for people. I don't know, Quenell.
I guess for me personally, as the cinematographer, is trying to capture the essence of Joe Frazier gym. And one thing that I've noticed just traveling around with Joe Frazier and going to other gyms is that Joe Frazier gym actually felt like a community center. Versus while you go to the other gyms like Johan and others, felt like people go there to train, to box, and to succeed. While Joe Frazier, I mean, we had kids running around just pretty much playing with boxing gloves and everything of the sort. So it was that essence that I felt that was very different from a lot of the gyms, and I personally felt it was just like a community center, especially because I've lived in the hood myself, so I understand that sort of angst and a place to go. And Joe Frazier was that place to go.
I gotta say, I'm one of those people who everyone has the perception that all Black Americans were for Ali. I actually was a Joe Frazier fan, and so was my mother. And we respected Ali, but we thought Ali talked a little too much smack.
About 2 years ago, I met Angelo Dundee at a fight Joe and I went to. And he said, Les, the number one question I always ask is, what would happen if Mike Tyson and Joe Frazier in their prime fought? And I said, Angelo, what did you say? He said, Tyson wouldn't last 3 rounds. You have to understand, and I think you saw there, Joe, all but 2 of the people he fought in his career were his size. Everyone else was bigger. Ali had, 5, 6 inches and a 9-inch reach on him. He was 5'11". And when you look at the people he fought, it was absolutely amazing. But like he said to me, what makes a champion in many cases is the heart. But there's a wonderful quote by Jack Dempsey: a champion is one who gets up when he can't. I believe there were some things before I knew him that he had made some comments about Tyson not having the kind of guidance he should have had and the support that he should have had to point him in the right direction. As you, I think, saw through the film, Joe had very strong principles about how you live life and how you do things. And I think he felt that Tyson, unfortunately, did not have that guidance when he was starting out. Ruben lost an arm early, and at age 8, Joe drove the car sitting on his father's lap. He was his father's favorite. He was the baby of the family. There was one younger who had died. And incredible relationship he had with his father.
So we was able to arrange a preview screening of the film, the documentary here in New York, actually in May. And then that's when we had Joe and Les came, and he was able to see the film. And he actually had a quote saying, if you want to check out, what my life is about, check this particular documentary out. And he was quite excited for that, that thumbs up from Mr. Joe Frazier. But yeah, he definitely seen the film. The screening took place on 23rd Street. We had about 400 people there, and everything. And just to comment on what Les said earlier about Joe Frazier loving his fans, you know, it was a lot of people there, and there was no real security because we can't afford the security. And like, so people were just clamoring around Joe Frazier the entire time. And we put him in a room, and the line whipped around the block, and he stood there and signed everyone's autograph, which I thought was quite surprising. I was like, "You ready to go?" I kept asking him, you know, "Is he comfortable?" He's like, "Nope, I'm just signing everyone's autograph." So even me personally, after being around for so many years, and still seeing that level of respect for his fans was just quite inspiring.
How do you box if you're blind in one eye? I mean, perspective.
How do you do it? Very carefully. No, what happened?
When you say blind, was he legally blind?
No, what happened is he had been working out, and a piece of metal came off the speed bag, off the thing,
Okay.
hit his eye, created a cataract. As he said, doctors were his best friend. He had to stop boxing in California when they tightened the physical exam. He memorized the eye charts. But it's like people who have a handicap find that some of their other senses are sharpened.
Right.
And that, I believe, is what happened. But if you also look at his fights, you'll see fighters today, and even Ali in some cases, they step back. Joe never, ever stepped back. He was in you, at you, and as he said to me, Les, when they missed me, that was as good as a hit. And if I hit their stomachs, their kidneys, their ribs, and everything, sooner or later their arms dropped.